Hi, and welcome to another episode of SWITCHCast, a podcast delving into the world of film brought to you by the team at Switch. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Charlie David Page.
I'm Jess Fenton.
I'm Daniel Lamon.
And I'm Jake Watt.
It's Thursday the 23rd of November 2017.
On this week's show, why is the biggest horror hit of 2017 being classed as a comedy? We discuss the unusual Golden Globes campaign for Get Out.
Thor Ragnarok surprised everyone recently with not only how fun it is, but its plethora of superstar cameos. So we'll discuss the best cameo appearances out there, and I crown the master of them all.
We also chat with Aussie film director Priscilla Cameron about her new film, The Butterfly Tree.
And as always, all our reviews and giveaways.
Well, let's get straight into it by having a look at The Butterfly Tree. Jake took a flutter on this little Aussie film, so were you drawn to it like a moth to the flame?
In The Butterfly Tree, we meet 13-year-old Finn, played by Ed Oxenbould, who's mourning the death of his mother. He meets Evelyn, Melissa George, the new owner of the local flower shop, and is quickly drawn into her exotic world of flora and insects and 1940s fashion. Meanwhile, his father Al, Ewan Leslie, is grieving in his own way and sleeping with Shelley, Sophie Lowe, a youthful kooky student in his creative writing class. As Finn's feelings for Evelyn grow stronger, conflict arises when he realizes Al has also fallen for her.
Come with me, I want to show you something. You have to look closely.
They're amazing.
Would you like a job?
Yeah, sure.
Can I give you a hand?
Finn. Tell me what's going on. Stay away!
Have you been having an affair with a student here?
It was her choice, Finn, not mine. How would you know? You weren't there!
Debut film director Priscilla Cameron has crafted an emotional, stylized, and slightly fantastical story about three people's relationship with love, loss, and each other. Jason Hargrave's cinematography is lush, with vivid use of painterly colour tones and lighting. Shot entirely on location on Mount Tamborine in the Gold Coast hinterland, on a budget of less than $3 million, The Butterfly Tree is a very, very pretty-looking film. On the acting side of things, Melissa George moves easily between kindly, seductive, and vulnerable. Ed Oxenbould embraces a role of complex emotional flux. Ewan Leslie is sympathetic as a rather immature bloke whose life is spiralling out of control, and Sophie Lowe provides the bulk of the humour as the beautiful but very strange Shelley. This personal, thoughtfully executed ensemble piece is well worth checking out. 4 stars.
So I was lucky enough to catch this at the world premiere at the Melbourne International Film Festival, and yeah, I entirely agree with you, Jake. This is an exceptional film, and it's something of a disservice to say that it's just an Australian film, because it actually has a huge amount of ambition to it. Like you say, it's just a $3 million film, which doesn't go very far when you're a filmmaker, but it looks like the budget is so much bigger than that. Honestly, it's so beautifully shot. And to have Melissa George on board in this particular role, she kind of makes this entire film. I mean, Ed Oxenbould is also amazing, but her portrayal is just exceptional as this particular character. She's fixating on screen.
Can I ask a question? How do you mean it's a disservice to refer to it as an Australian film?
Sorry, a disservice to refer to it as just an Australian film.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, Australian film gets a really bad rap. We have a certain viewpoint in mind when it comes to when we say an Australian film. You know, it's generally something really dark and really heavy and really dramatic, and it's been funded by Screen Australia, and it's gone through a rigorous process and has to abide by all these guidelines. And this film kind of breaks out of that box. It's very different. It's very light. It's very dreamy. It's very ethereal. I don't know. It's a very unusual type of Australian film. It's not the kind of Australian film that we normally produce.
That's what I thought you were getting at. Because it just sounds like something the likes of which we don't make often. From what you were saying, it sounded like you were saying to call it an Australian film actually makes it sound worse than it is, as opposed to just it being different to what we usually see.
No, it's more to try and encourage people to actually get out and see it, because it's so much more than your typical quintessential Australian film. It's quite beautiful, and even from Jake's synopsis there, you can tell the story is not a usual kind of film. It's a little bit twisted in terms of its characters. It's really interesting the way it all plays out. I think it's trying not to give too much away, because it's the whole crux of the story is quite moving when you find out what it's all actually about.
Yeah, you can really like see the European influences on the film as well. Like it is like obviously an Australian film, but the dreaminess that this film has is, yeah, I don't know, it kind of makes it stand out a little bit compared to a lot of other local films, which is kind of why I liked it so much, I guess. It just had its own unique texture with that sort of there's kind of, European sort of sensibilities and a bit of fantasy and stuff kind of mixed with essentially like an Australian film. So it kind of gives it this like really unusual flavor, I guess. Yeah, really cool movie. I just another thing I've got to mention as well is like the actors. So Ed Oxenbould, Melissa George, Ewan Leslie, and Sophie Lowe are just really good in this. They they're good actors anyway. I think Melissa George is probably one of the most underrated Australian actresses. Like she cops a lot of shit from like the Australian media and people in general, but she's like so good in everything. But in this movie especially, like they all really inhabit their roles, and you can just tell they're enjoying acting as well. Like it's just a really enjoyable movie to watch in terms of pure acting.
Yeah, it's clear they're enjoying being there. It's clear that they're enjoying being a part of this story.
And such a small movie for these actors as well, especially like Melissa George and Ed Oxenbould, who've worked on pretty big US movies.
Actually, Jake, we should talk about Sophie Lowe as well, because that's a name a lot of people won't have heard of, but she makes a really big impact in this film.
Yeah, she does. She's pretty awesome actually. Like she's really funny and pretty hot to be honest. In this like really creepy sort of way in this movie. She plays like a real kook. One thing I have to also mention as well is just the use of colors in this movie, especially when they're shooting Sophie Lowe and Ed Oxenbould. This movie has like sort of a really vibrant use of blues and reds and whatever. And Sophie Lowe, watch her act and stuff, and just, red hair and blue eyes. Ed Oxenbold's, luminescent blue eyes. Watching them act and with this lighting and cinematography behind it, it's just, I don't know, it's like super enjoyable to watch. Yeah, I really like this movie. You can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and The Butterfly Tree is in cinemas now. And keep listening. A little later in the episode, I'll speak to the film's director, Priscilla Cameron, about her decade-long endeavour to bring it to life.
Also out today is Better Watch Out. Jess grabbed her eggnog and baseball bat and headed out to catch this one, so did it make your naughty list?
Better Watch Out is most definitely on the naughty list, but in a very, very good way. In this disturbingly terrific Christmas horror comedy, yeah, that's a genre now, 18-year-old Ashley is babysitting longtime client 13-year-old Luke Lerner, played by Levi Miller, and his best friend Garrett, played by Ed Oxenbould. But this fun night with the hot babysitter soon turns terrifying when it becomes a home invasion and things start getting twisted and messy. I'll say nothing further because I'm not an arsehole, and the less you know, the better.
What was that? Oh my god.
Get away from the window.
There's someone there. Ashley! Are you hiding? I'll find you. Don't worry, I'll protect you.
Tis the season to
What you
be
say?
jolly.
What are you doing, man? Please let me out of this. You're home alone again?
La 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 la. Awesome!
Better Watch Out sits more on the disturbing and creepy scale than Horror One, but it's still a fantastic thrill ride. This young cast of Australians, as it was shot right here in Sydney, but alas, it is an American film, is phenomenal. They all run the gamut of emotions and psychological torment and make a meal of each and every scene. Levi Miller, the absolute standout of the bunch. Look, I took issue with one aspect of the film that I won't point out here so as not to bring the mood down, but it is explained in my online review. Apart from that, I enjoyed every creeptacular moment of Better Watch Out, and I think you will too. 4 stars.
I saw this movie as well, and it's kind of hard to really explain what I enjoyed about it without spoiling the movie. But I was thinking today, like, there aren't really enough really good Christmas-themed horror movies, and
I mean, there are a few.
That keeps
There
me
are
up
one
at
or
night.
two out there.
Yeah. There are a couple, but like the only like really genuinely good Christmas themed horror movie I can think of is like the original Black Christmas.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
There's plenty of other stuff like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and
I was thinking of one. I haven't seen it, but it's called Krampus.
Krampus.
yeah, that could have been good, but that was disappointing. That movie. It's kind of like Gremlins, but less enjoyable.
Well, Gremlins is kind of a Christmas horror film. Oh my god, we're getting into the subject of what films are not Christmas films that aren't Christmas films. Let's move on. That's we'll save that discussion.
You know what's really awesome? Having 2 films out with Ed Oxenbould in.
Oh, mate.
'Cause, Daniel, you are a massive fan of Ed Oxenbould.
I have my own Ed Oxenbould fan club. He's great.
A shrine in the spare room, and yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a shrine. The kid's 16. That's creepy. But I remember seeing him in Alexander and the Horrible No Good Very Bad Day, and I was really surprised because I just thought this is a really difficult part to pull off, to actually make work and make genuine. And then everything I've seen him in since, he has this really beautiful natural ease to him. And Levi Miller as well, even in Pan, which was crap. But he was actually quite charming. And he's in Ava DuVernay's A Wrinkle in Time, which is pretty much the best indication people think he's got good talent by putting him in that film. The cast of this really is a really exciting, interesting cast. I mean, it has Dacre Montgomery in it, who's now everyone's favourite, piece of toddy after Stranger Things. Even though, I fell in love with him when he jacked off a bull in Power Rangers, but, each to their own.
Do?
Have you? This proves that none of you have seen Power Rangers, which is terrible, because it's brilliant. Yes, the opening scene, he jacks off a bull.
Why don't I remember that? I saw Power Rangers.
Yeah, at the beginning when they're stealing the cow and they're trying to milk the cow and they realize that the cow's not it's a male, it's a bull. Yeah. It's because they jack off a cow.
And then and at the end he bitch slaps the bad person.
Yes.
So anyway, there's some really great Australian talent in this film.
Because it was made here in Australia. Yeah. Yay.
I can't find any information about the director though. All I can see his name is Chris Peckover and he's fucking hot.
He's a bit jacked.
But I can't find any information about him. But I looked up Zach Kahn, who co-wrote the screenplay with him and came up with the story. And he has a really great IMDb bio, which I'll just read for lols. Zach Kahn was first seen in his kindergarten production of Les Miserables. Based in Los Angeles, Kahn is a comedian, actor, writer, director, and author. His favourite genres to work with are comedy, thriller, horror, drama, fiction, non-fiction, action, crime, indie, mainstream, romantic comedy, and porn. He can currently be seen in Panic Room on Ice. So
he must have written that himself.
Oh, yes. And now I want to see the film.
I didn't hear Christmas horror comedy in there, though.
No,
so that's
but I think maybe that might have been written before the release of Better Watch Out.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So he's broadening his horizons there.
Yes, he might have to update that. But yeah, so just, great cast. Dacre Montgomery is hot. The director is hot. And that's a funny bio. And I need to, make sure that
So go see the
doesn't
film.
let me down.
No, he hasn't. This is a really, really great film. And remember, this is coming from someone who does not enjoy horror films by any
That's
stretch
actually
of
the most
imagination.
surprising thing about your review. I was really,
loved it.
particularly after you said in the Halloween episode how much you don't like horror films. It's really nice to hear you respond so positively to one.
Yay! But like I said, earlier, it's not. I wouldn't really classify it as a horror film. It's more just it's more of a psychological thriller, actually.
It's kind of really reminiscent of Funny Games. Funny Games, anybody?
You have my attention. Yeah, Michael Haneke's masterpiece. Yes, you have my attention.
It's a Christmas themed Funny Games original version, not the remake.
Obviously.
Anyway, Better Watch Out is in cinemas now, and check out my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
Also out today is Goodbye Christopher Robin. Daniel grabbed his favourite teddy and headed to the cinema to catch this biopic. So did you find it full of childlike nostalgia?
Goodbye Christopher Robin looks at the creation story behind Winnie the Pooh, specifically the relationship between writer A.A. Milne, played by Domhnall Gleeson, and his son Christopher, or Billy Moon, played by Will Tilston. How their relationship led to the creation of the beloved stories, and how the success of Winnie the Pooh ultimately destroyed that relationship.
Mummy says you're writing a book to stop people going to war. I think your book is a jolly good idea.
You're the only one that does.
I'd really like if you wrote a book for me. I'd definitely read it.
Shall we go for a walk?
Aren't you working?
It doesn't seem likely.
Could you think of a good name for a donkey?
Eeyore. I think I've got something for us. Ernest and I are putting your bear in a book. We're putting you in it too.
What will you call me in the book?
Your real name, Christopher Robin.
Let's be hunters in the snow. Come on, don't get frostbite.
The creatures in the story are toys. They're toys, but the woods are real.
Winnie the Pooh. It's rather inexplicable.
Yes.
Evening news would put Christopher on the front page. He has to be allowed to grow up. He has to know he's important.
Radio interview, newspaper interview. He can't do all this.
He's rather good at it.
He's a little boy. Come on then.
Where to?
Home, I should think.
The problem with most biopics these days is that they try to make a film out of a story that isn't even there. In the case of Goodbye Christopher Robin, it turns out to be the opposite. This is a genuinely fascinating and deeply moving story about both the wonder of childhood and the tragedy when it is stolen or monopolised on, and both Gleeson and Tilston give strong performances, along with Kelly MacDonald as Billy's nurse Noo. It's more the pity then that the film itself just isn't very good. It's badly written, badly directed, badly shot, and badly edited, and while the strength of the material wins out in many instances, it never detracts from how messy and unfocused the film is. There's a palpable sense of melancholy to this film, and it never engages in the emotional blackmail of biopics like The Theory of Everything or The Danish Girl. But with a stronger and more focused creative team behind it, Goodbye Christopher Robin could have been something really special. Instead, we just have this missed opportunity. I'm giving it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, okay, it's not that great, but it does have Donald Gleeson and Margot Robbie in it, so I'm really excited. But I'm gonna steer the conversation away. Yeah, just a little bit. And I want to ask, if you could make a biopic on anyone, who would it be? Allow me to start off. One of my favourite singers in the whole entire world is Sam Cooke. And I think his story is really, really fascinating. I can understand why, for anyone who knows, I'm not going to explain it, just look on Wikipedia. But I can understand why this story hasn't been made yet. There is just so many giant question marks that hang over the end of his life and his death in particular. And I don't think anyone is brave enough to sort of put their ideas and their vision into it, because it would go south. Just the racial tensions alone would end up sending it south. But yeah, I want to say Sam Cooke. Daniel?
Oh, I'm just looking up Sam Cooke because I'd actually never heard of him, so I will look that up.
Oh, trust me, you'll know his music.
Because I've got IMDb in front of me, so I just looked him up on IMDb, and I could see that his music has been quite a few films that I know. The person I probably would love to see a biopic of is actually Lewis Carroll. The closest we've got is Dreamchild, but that is about the writing of Alice in Wonderland through the lens of Alice Hargreaves, so the woman who Alice was based on. But we haven't actually had an actual biopic on Lewis Carroll, mostly because I think it's a similar thing to what Jess said about Sam Cooke. There are a lot of uncomfortable gaps in his story. Obviously, the stuff about whether he was a pedophile, about the photography that he took of young girls. Like, he's one of those men for whom he is tremendously interesting, pushed forward a lot of things in the 1800s in terms of photography and literature and children's literature, but there's just an unusualness about him that I think is the reason why no one's tackled him yet. Dennis Potter tried a few times, I'm pretty sure Dennis Potter. From a theatre maker's perspective, I've always wanted to do something about Lewis Carroll because I just find him intensely fascinating. So that's who I would say, but it would have to be the right person who wouldn't water it down and make it into some fucking, Goodbye Christopher Robin bullshit.
Okay. Jake, you got a suggestion?
Yeah. So there's a composer called Wendy Carlos. So Wendy Carlos helped popularize the Moog synthesizer in the 1970s. She won 3 Grammy Awards. She composed the score to A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, and Tron. And she was also one of the first public figures to disclose that she'd undergone gender reassignment surgery. To me, just a super accomplished musician, artist. I would kill to to watch a movie about her life. I think it'd be fascinating.
Seconded. I'd love to see that too.
Yeah.
Wendy Carlos is ace.
The only thing is, I'm pretty sure she's quite private. I've never actually seen any documentaries about her life or anything pop up.
I've seen a few interviews with her and she's very funny.
Okay.
Because I've got hours of documentaries on fucking Stanley Kubrick films and she pops up in quite a few. I think on one, it's actually a recording session with her where she takes you into her recording studio and talks you through the process of how she composed, I think, A Clockwork Orange. Yeah, she's very funny and very dry and instantly charming. So I would definitely love to. I second Wendy Carlos biopic. They should fucking do it.
Very good. And Charlie, who have you got for us?
It's only a matter of time before we get a Barry Humphries biopic.
Yeah, true.
That's something that's got to be on the cards. It's got to be.
I'm sure Channel 7 is getting it ready
they're
right
just
now.
waiting for him to die.
But yeah, that's
nice. I like it.
Well,
yeah.
All of those sound infinitely better than Goodbye Christopher Robin. So you can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and Goodbye Christopher Robin is in cinemas now.
Also hitting cinemas today is The Teacher. Chris took in this valuable lesson and filed this report for us.
Set in early 1980s Czechoslovakia, The Teacher is a fiercely acerbic examination of one woman's abuses of power, exploring the everyday oppressions of a communist regime with the best kind of didacticism. Zuzana Mahreri is the eponymous educator, Maria Drazdokova, who at the beginning of each school year asks her students to stand and announce what it is that their parents do for a living. This seemingly innocuous question is how Drazdokova sets up a certain quid pro quo, trading favours from the parents for improved grades for the students. But we're clued in from the film's flashback structure that something tragic has resulted from this arrangement, as the school gathers the parents for an emergency meeting that's like if 12 Angry Men took place at a particularly tense parent-teacher conference. This is a sharp script and a decent film, but the real drawcard here is Maureri's ferociously committed performance. The way she embodies what could have just been a mere concept is remarkable, as she never portrays the wounded humanity at the centre of this complicated, venomous woman. It's all there in her face, as she lets us in on Drazdokova's real-time calculations behind every act of manipulation and coercion, doing and saying whatever she has to in order to keep hold of her beloved power over everyone. I really liked this film, and after apologising for butchering all of the names in this review, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. The Teacher is in cinemas now, and you can check out my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
You can also catch Daddy's Home 2 in cinemas from today. Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are back in this co-parenting comedy, only this time their own daddies are joining the family for the festive season.
My dad is going to scoff at everything we do. Nothing's ever good enough for him.
Your father hasn't met the new evolved Dusty? I mean, who wouldn't be impressed with you? Dear God. This is gonna come off weird, Dusty, but he's beautiful.
Here you go. Why don't you bring the car around? We'll meet you at the curb.
Right away, sir. I mean, no. I'm sorry, I'm not the driver. No, I'm Brad. The stepdad?
Why is he here?
Because my dad's coming too.
Dad! There's my big man!
With Mel Gibson and John Lithgow added to the cast, these two fathers add new complications that threaten this very extended family during the silly season. God help us.
Daniel, who's your daddy?
Oh my God.
I know you tried not to, but you made that sound so dirty.
There's no way to
Every time
read
you
that
said daddy or daddy,
on this film, which
it.
honestly, I think I don't think there are a few things on the planet I could care less about right now than this film.
I don't know. I think there's like one real thing that needs to be addressed in this movie, like the elephant in the room, is do you really want an actor in a comedy with a previous history of, sexism and saying offensive stuff and assault? And I'm just talking about like Mark Wahlberg here, but to like a further degree, maybe like Mel Gibson as well. Like, at least Mel Gibson's like a good actor, right? But Mark Wahlberg is, I don't know. I think we've got a problem here with Wahlberg.
Betty's not asking God's forgiveness for this film.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, but Jake, didn't you hear? He made Hacksaw Ridge and now all is forgiven, apparently.
Jesus. Nothing is forgiven after Hacksaw Ridge. But it is actually a really good point. Like, obviously Daddy's Home 2 couldn't have anticipated what was going to happen recently with the sexual assault scandals and the idea of having these figures in film being detrimental to the film. But as much as this isn't exactly a family film, having Mel Gibson in it does feel really kind of gross. It just feels weird having it. The further extension of that is now that the full cast has been announced for the next Fantastic Beasts film. It's like, why is Johnny Depp still in this? Like, That's a family film. That's a film for children. Why are you putting them within major franchises and giving them work? Great, John Lithgow's in the film. Great. But Mel Gibson's like, why?
Yeah, I feel sorry for John Lithgow.
Yeah, like, he's better than this. He's just coming off Beatrice at dinner. Like, come on. Poor bloke.
I honestly don't see the difference between Mel Gibson and, like Mark Wahlberg seriously does have a history of he knocked a Vietnam veteran's glass eye out. He said that if he was...
Really?
He said that if he was on one of the planes that crashed in the Twin Towers on 9/11, that the plane never would have gone down, or the terrorists wouldn't have won, or whatever. He executive produced Entourage. The guy has a history of shittiness behind him as well. So I guess everyone's focusing on Mel Gibson at the moment, saying, "Hey, what's this arsehole doing in a comedy?" But Mark Wahlberg has been around as well. So I guess where do you really draw the line between the shitbag?
I mean, realistically, I didn't know all that about Mark Wahlberg. Then you draw the line at both of them. Why are both of them doing it? I mean, Mark Wahlberg makes fucking awful films anyway, so,
Yeah, the most unforgivable Mark Wahlberg crime is that, he made Transformers movies.
Yes.
And I mean, let's look at this as an even bigger picture. Forget who's actually in this film. Was Daddy's Home, the original, particularly funny or enjoyable to begin with?
No.
Did it warrant a sequel? Because I'm going with no on that one. I'm very happy to not enjoy this.
If you saw Daddy's Home, please write into Switch and let us know whether it's any good, because we cannot be asked.
I did see Daddy's Home, I'm telling you.
Oh,
no.
dear. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so did I.
But I think it's kind of like the answer to Bad Mums. You had the mum film, and now you've got the dad film, and then less than 2 years later, you've got the Bad Mums 2, and now you've got Daddy's Home 2.
Bad Mums has got Mila Kunis and...
Yeah, and it handled the subject a lot more gracefully than Daddy's Home. It's not very sophisticated.
And it's men at Christmas competing for masculinity. I mean, let's face it, it's just going to be a rehash of Christmas Vacation jokes and stuff like that. All the people that have done it before, that come before them and done it better.
Well, finally, Tulip Fever is also in cinemas today. Jake caught this period piece, and the film has been a long time coming. So did it blossom after the extended wait?
Tulip Fever is based on the 1999 best-selling novel of the same name by Deborah Mogach, whose earlier book, These Foolish Things, became The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. Directed by Justin Chadwick, whose previous credits include Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, and The Other Berlin Girl, and written by Tom Stoppard. This sounds kind of promising, right? Set in the Netherlands in the 17th century, during the period of the Tulip Mania, the film tells the story of Jan van Loos, played by Dane DeHaan, an artist who falls for a married young woman, Sophia, played by Alicia Vikander, while is commissioned to paint her portrait by her husband, a wealthy merchant named Cornelis Sandvoort, Christoph Waltz. After a fishmonger makes a lucky gamble on a batch of 50 white bulbs that contain a rare breaker, Jan gets cocky in what amounts to the world's first futures market, and before long he's risking great sums on the prospect that the same breaker will fetch considerably more down the road.
Tulip business. I think it's the answer to my problems. If I were rich, I could take you away.
He would find us. He would not stop looking for me unless I was dead.
My lord, I pray that my wife shall be not of corruptible seed.
You've been busy. You've not been painting. No offense.
I made a plan to save us both. We will be together.
There's nothing without risk.
I love you.
Now tell your husband what you've been up to.
What have I done?
The patronising use of a narrator to walk the audience through the plot, a shaky camera, fast editing, bad acting, poor writing, from a script by Tom fucking Stoppard, yawning black holes of characterization, a complete lack of sexual chemistry between the usually impressive Vikander and Dane Leonardo DiCaprio is too expensive DeHaan. A wasted cast that includes Cara Delevingne, Zach Galifianakis, and legitimately good actors like Holiday Granger, Jack O'Connell, Douglas Hodge, David Harewood, and Dame Judi Dench. The only real positive is the work of production designer Simon Elliott and cinematographer Ejul Brild. Harvey Weinstein defended this movie in advance with a column for Deadline Hollywood by saying, "I know this film's not perfect, very few are, but it's a perfectly good time in a movie theatre. If Harvey Weinstein seems like a trustworthy character to you, have at it. Otherwise, avoid catching Tulip Fever at a cinema near you." 1 out of 5.
Wow. I mean, Tom Stoppard and 3 Oscar-winning actors, and this movie is an absolute dog. But aside from that, I remember months ago when people started talking about this, and I looked online and I just read like the brief synopsis of it, and it was about tulips, and I thought it was the dumbest sounding movie I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, we've had a lot of love affair movies out there over time where the guy will sit there and go, I'm going to rob a bank and then we can start our new life, or I'm going to, kill my wife and we'll use the insurance money to start a new life, or, et cetera, et cetera. But never in my life did I think someone would come forward and sit there and go, I'm going to sell fucking tulips and then we can have the best life ever. I don't care where it's set, what period, what country. This movie is about tulips. Tulips, people.
I remember watching the trailer for this back in 1948 or whenever the fuck it came out, like the trailer. But I remember thinking, I was like, I like all these people. Like, Alicia Vikander is a goddess, and Holiday Granger is not far behind. And, I want to do very bad things to Jack O'Connell, and James Judi Dench is perfect. Like, it's a great cast. And I was like, but why this trailer bore me? Why? It just looks boring. And I have to admit, as much as Alicia Vikander had that one really good period, like Testament of Youth, Ex Machina, Anna Karenina, like she was making really good decisions. Then she won her Oscar for that turgid piece of absolute filth, The Danish Girl. And since then, she seems to keep popping up in shit, like making shitty decisions.
I don't know. She married Michael Fassbender. That's not a bad decision.
She keeps ending up in these very heavy biopics, like The Light Between Oceans, where it's like, my God, you are better than this film could ever muster itself up to be. I'm actually just impressed they're releasing it at all. Like, they must really have no choice, because they could have just put it straight to DVD.
Yeah. So, just as a side note, I guess, this movie was put into production in 2004. That's how long this movie's been rattling around for. And the cast then, it was like Natalie Portman, Jude Law, Jim Broadbent. Those are the three leads. And as if this movie wasn't trying to recapture the Miramax glory days enough, this is trying to be like the next Shakespeare in Love, essentially, or another Shakespeare in Love. Originally, John Madden, the director of Shakespeare in Love, was attached to direct Tulip Fever.
They've traded in the bard for bulbs.
Yeah, what I actually love about this is like some trivia as well. Gordon Brown, who was the Chancellor back in the day in England, so he closed a UK tax loophole that increased the film's filming costs by millions overnight. So production was immediately cancelled despite the fact that all the sets had been built and over 12,000 tulip bulbs had already been planted. And they had to scrap the entire thing. That just cracks me up.
And yet they still didn't give up. They still
but look who was in charge of the fucking thing. The man belted films to within an inch of their lives to get them out. Like, that doesn't surprise me at all. This film it's stuck around that long.
As a movie, this is sort of pretty shit movie. But as a historical document on the downfall of a really influential film studio and stuff, I think this movie will be
studied and debated for decades to come.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like the the Room of high budget period pieces. The backstory behind it is way more interesting than the product itself. I don't know. I still regret seeing the movie, but doing the research on it was actually pretty interesting. So yeah. Tulip Fever is in cinemas now, and check out my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
All right, now let's check out the upcoming films in our trailer wrap. Here's The Mercy.
A single-handed race around the world.
I've already sent in my entry form.
Are you serious?
Alone on a boat for 9 months? You're either drunk or mad.
Well, we should have another drink so that we can rule out madness.
May I point out you don't have a boat capable of such a voyage?
We're going to build one.
Have you ever done anything like that before?
That's the point. If I can do it, then so can the bloke who stares at the horizon.
If I'm putting in the money, what are you putting in?
Everything else.
I fooled myself into thinking we were just building a boat. I didn't think I'd actually have to watch you sail away.
That's what boats do.
Promise me you'll come home.
Any sane man would want to pull out of such an endeavour. Leave your doubts with us here on the shore.
Good luck, Daddy!
Take your dreams out to sea.
Look, I mean, it's not the most fascinating looking trailer in the world. The cast is great. Rachel Weisz, Colin Firth, David Thewlis. They're all really dependable names. The thing that got me initially excited watching the trailer was when the name James Marsh came up. James Marsh directed what I think is one of the best documentaries ever made, which is Man on Wire, about Philip Petit's tightrope walk between the two World Trade Center buildings. But I kept thinking to myself, I know that he's done feature films. I know James Marsh has done feature films, but I can't think of what they are. And so I went on IMDb very quickly. I was like, no, it must have been something really good. And realised that James Marsh's last film was The Theory of Everything. And I hate that film with much of my being and soul. So now I believe the reason why this trailer looks not particularly exciting is because it will be shit. So that's about as far as my interest goes, to be honest.
You don't want to see Colin Firth slowly go crazy on a boat?
The trailer was actually quite confusing. I wasn't sure exactly what it was I was going to watch. It kept talking about a mystery, and I kept watching the trailer going, what's the fucking mystery? Like, the last thing I wanted is to give me everything. But I found as a trailer, it was quite a confused piece of promotion. I wasn't sure what to walk away with.
It does kind of assume that you already know a bit of the story, which is a bit presumptuous of it. I think that's a bit of the problem with the trailer.
The story's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a fascinating story, and I'd probably watch anything with Rachel Weisz in it, so...
The film was written by Scott Z. Burns, who hasn't written a film in a while, but his bigger films were some of the last films that Steven Soderbergh made before he went into retirement, including Side Effects and Contagion. The first time. Including Side Effects and Contagion, which all were very confusing films. Like, narratively, they just jumped around too much. They didn't make a lot of sense. Maybe this will be the film that James Marsh finally can, break through his problem of transition from documentary to film, but I don't have much hope from watching this trailer.
Well, you can catch The Mercy in Australian cinemas from the 8th of March 2018. Now let's take a look at the Deadpool 2 teaser trailer.
Hello there. Welcome back. I'm glad you could join me today. Let's just dive right in and run all the colors across the screen that you'll need to paint along with me. I have my regular old canvas here, wet and ready to go. Now, let's grab our trusty 2-inch brush here. Whack that off real good. Just beat it like it owes you money. We're gonna get a little dab of our yellow snow here. We're gonna mix that with just another little dab of our Betty White. Now, let's just dance in a happy little sky. Now remember, this is your world. You get to make and break the rules here. Wish I could jump in there and roll around in all that cascading white powder. Yeah, just get high on all of life's splendor. God, I love cocaine so much.
Oh my God. I love Deadpool. I love it so much. There's not much that we can talk about here because it was the ultimate definition of teaser trailers, just a bunch of really fast cuts. But if you look really closely, and I got so excited about this, you do spot Julian Dennison, master New Zealand teenager Julian Dennison in the teaser trailer. But more importantly, the way they've done this with the mock episode of that guy who taught everyone how to paint and has, launched 1,001 memes.
Oh, Bob Ross.
Thank you. And if you look at Deadpool, like the first Deadpool, and now they're doing it again this time, the crew and the masterminds behind Deadpool it is an absolute and utter masterclass in advertising, marketing, and self-promotion.
It's very good.
They put themselves everywhere last year. I mean, Deadpool even did PSAs for, I think it was prostate checks and it was like breast checks or cervical cancer or something like that as well.
They had one for Australia Day. They had,
Australia Day. It was like Deadpool was everywhere, and more importantly, the world could not get enough because they were so funny, they were so smart, they were so clever, and the movie was just awesome to boot.
And it works because it's got nothing to do with the film. It's just like these really stupid, funny clips that are the essence of viral videos. Like that's why people wanted to see this movie more than anything.
Yeah.
The thing that really works about this particular teaser, this kind of teaser, for me anyway, because I also really enjoyed Deadpool a lot more than I expected. But I was pretty trepidatious about the idea of going into doing a second one because I thought, it was an unexpected hit. And when unexpected hits have sequels, they kind of beat them to within an inch of their lives until they're a waste. This at least told me, okay, they haven't lost what it was that made the first one interesting. They're showing that his particular kind of banter, his relationship with the audience, the anarchy that made that first film so interesting may follow through in it.
And the crudeness.
And the crudeness for sure. But the thing that actually is most excited, because again, IMDb is right next to me, I looked it up. David Leitch, don't know how to pronounce his last name, who's directing the film. He didn't direct the first film because there was a falling out, I think, around the director of the first film. But David Leitch directed John Wick and Atomic Blonde. That really excites me because it's a kind of slickness that could elevate Deadpool 2 or whatever they decide to call it, up to another level into something even more exciting. This at least gives the impression it's not going to be the same shit all over again.
The thing with David Leitch is, like, I didn't realize that he was also the stunt coordinator for a movie called Orgasmo by Matt Parker and Trey Stone, which is like...
Oh my God, seriously?
It's about a Mormon porn star who's also a kung fu expert who fights like evil porn stars. And the movie is absolutely awesome. And the movie itself is like a really good companion piece for Deadpool, like strangely enough. Anyway, that's what sold me on David Leitch as a...
He was also in charge of stunts on 300 and Fight Club and V for Vendetta. So at least we know he can handle action. But, you know...
Well, catch Deadpool 2 in Australian cinemas from the 31st of May, 2018. And finally, let's take a look at Rampage.
I rescued George when he was 2 years old. George never would have survived on his own.
He definitely trusts you.
Last night, George was 7 feet and weighed 500 pounds. George, you okay, buddy? You're scared. It's okay. This morning, he's 9 feet, pushing 1,000. What's happening to my friend?
Are you familiar with genetic editing? Changes will be incredibly unpredictable.
Is he the only one?
Oh, you didn't know about the 30-foot wolf?
I'm not sure that anybody heard me watching the trailer for Rampage and just like laughing all the way through it. So I remember playing this game when it first came out. It's a computer game. You control a giant monkey, a giant ape, a giant wolf thing, or a giant lizard, and you run around a city eating humans until the army kills you. So watching this as
so a lot of character depth.
Watching this as a movie and watching like The Rock signing towards a giant CGI gorilla and yelling George like about 5 or 6 times. While smashing
goes, he's my friend. How do we save him?
Easily the best line is, yeah, well, animals get me.
Well, like the Smashing Pumpkins play in the background. God, I don't know, man. Like I've got a good feeling about this.
Yeah, this trailer was embarrassing. I'm gonna say it.
And the thing is, this isn't the only film called Rampage. Hugh Boll, the notoriously bad filmmaker, his best movie.
Let's bring Hugh Boll up. Up, sure.
So Hugh Boll's like sort of best movie is a 2009 movie called Rampage. So, this movie has like a lot to prove. It's like got to take the mantle of Rampage away from Hugh Boll.
Well, I'd like to step in at this point and just voice the fact that I'm so fucking excited about this film. I was yelling at the trailer. I was screaming, yes! Yes, giant monkey! Yes, crocodile! Like, this is my shit. But the moment that it cemented for me that I will be there to see this film was from the director of San Andreas. And I went, yes! This film is going to be trash. I'm so excited about this film. I originally, when I heard that, when I heard it existed, I went, "Oh, that sounds fucking stupid." But then, because we had to watch the trailer to record the podcast, I watched it and went, "Oh my god, I love this." Oh, I can't wait. Plus, it has Jake Lacey in it, and Jake Lacey is fucking hot, and I hope that he takes his shirt off in it, because realistically, that is my marker for a trash film.
And The Rock, I understand, but what the heck is Naomi Harris doing in this movie?
Seriously. Having a great time. She's having a great time.
She's clearly got amnesia or something, because
she's like, you know what? I'm going to go have some fucking fun for once with the fucking Rock and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Oh, it just looks, it does not look like it's going to take itself seriously at all. Like, this is my shit. I'm there for this. I'm with you, Rampage. I'm behind you. Fuck, I'll be there.
I don't think Dwayne Johnson, his ego's too big to make fun of himself. I think this will take itself seriously.
Well, I hope the film makes fun of him, because, if it's anything like San Andreas, I'll be so happy.
Oh, God. I weep for the future.
Well, join Daniel and rampage into Australian cinemas from the 12th of April 2018. And to check out all these trailers and more, head to youtube.com/MakeTheSwitchAU.
With the award season starting up, studios are getting their For Your Consideration campaigns into gear. In a surprise move, Universal have submitted acclaimed horror classic Get Out in the comedy category of the Golden Globes with director Jordan Peele's approval, causing many people to scratch their head in confusion. How on earth could the supreme horror film of 2017 possibly be classed as a comedy? And has this happened before?
Okay, the double barrel question. So first of all, you have to realize that Hollywood Foreign Press, they do not categorize these films. It is up to the producers and filmmakers to submit their film in a particular category. And what's funny is that this is not just a comedy category, it's also comedy and musical. So I hope we didn't miss the aspect
it's clearly
of
a musical.
Get Out being a musical. Look, there were moments in the film where I laughed, and it is actually by a well-known comedic actor and director and writer, Jordan Peele. I don't get it either, but, more recently, one of the most infamous cases of this happening before was when Matt Damon won for Best Actor in a musical or comedy for The Martian.
And The Martian was submitted as a comedy as well, which was the other example I was thinking of.
Yeah, and it was submitted as a comedy or musical as well. And everyone was scratching their heads over that one. Even to this day, Matt Damon still makes fun of the fact that he won for a comedy or musical. So there is precedent for it. I don't know why. But also you have to understand that a lot of the time it's a strategic move. If a production house feels that they won't win in the drama category, then they submit it as the front runner in the comedic and musical category. So I think that's probably what they're doing here.
Well, this year there's more likely to be a larger slew of films going for that drama category. So it's purely a strategic thing that they're putting it into the comedy musical category. It gives them a much bigger chance of having a win. But it's also got us talking about it. It's drumming up more publicity for the actual movie. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what they're after here.
I totally agree. I think it is a very clever strategic move. But I mean, Jordan Peele himself, people came to him like, do you realize that you've submitted it as a comedy? He went, yes. I wanted it submitted as a comedy because from his perspective, and a lot of African-American critics and writers have come out and said, yeah, it is a comedy. And of course, it's one of those films where the horror side of it has the more lasting impact, but it is a very funny film. And when they announced that it was going to go in the comedy category, I went, well, yeah, I actually completely agreed because I think it's very appropriate. A, because it doesn't fit as a drama, and B, because it is a wonderfully strategic move because we all want to see Get Out be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. It's just, we want to see it have its presence. What I think is more interesting about the decision is it kind of highlights the arbitrary uselessness of the idea of a genre as it is.
That's the Golden Globes, right, isn't it?
Well, and not just the Golden Globes, but I mean, we always go on about how, fantasy films had never won a Best Picture until The Lord of the Rings, and the only horror film that's ever won an Oscar for Best Picture is Silence of the Lambs, and no science fiction film has ever won. By putting them in these categories, it feels like it's excluding them from the possibility because it has to be a drama or maybe a comedy. So it kind of points out the fact that Get Out as a film is kind of hard to categorize, and that we're having more films of late turn up that are actually harder to categorize. Would you call The Killing of a Sacred Deer a comedy or a horror film? Would you call The Square a drama or a comedy? And particularly with directors with Noah Baumbach and directors like Alexander Payne, I think it just highlights the fact that the idea of a genre is dumb.
Okay, moving on. It's been a few weeks now since the release of Thor Ragnarok, longer if you're in Australia, because suck it rest of the world. And it's made $1 gazillion, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I reveal that Matt Damon, Luke Hemsworth, and Sam Neill all have hilarious cameos in the film together. Matt Damon is no stranger to awesome cameos, with Eurotrip, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and a very secretive turn in Interstellar, just to mention a few. I'm not willing to name him king of the cameos right now because I have someone else in mind that I will reveal later, but I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on the best cameos out there. There are many. A lot of them are grand and fantastic. I'm going to name just a few of my favorites. Bill Murray in Zombieland.
Oh, yes.
Where he plays himself. Pamela Anderson in Borat.
Oh, my
Billy
God.
Idol.
When does she appear in Borat?
What are you talking about? When does she appear in Borat? He tries to kidnap her.
I just remember the bed and breakfast they stay in. That's my favorite moment in Borat.
Okay, I'm still going. Sorry. Billy Idol in The Wedding Singer. Neil Patrick Harris in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, Alice Cooper in Wayne's World, and my pick of the bunch would be Johnny Depp in 21 Jump Street, the movie, where he reprises his television role, but in the most fabulous, fabulous, fabulous way. Anyone else want to chime in?
I guess my favourite cameo in a movie would probably be Alec Baldwin as Blake in Glengarry Glen Ross.
Is that a cameo? I thought he was just in it.
Yeah, he's only in it for like a couple of minutes. So Glengarry Glen Ross is based on the David Mamet play. His character doesn't exist in that play. So when it came time to make the movie, they needed to kind of bulk the movie up by a couple of minutes. So they wrote this new role into it. And it's got Alec Baldwin in to play this sales motivator. And it's fucking awesome. I love Glengarry Glen Ross because the dialogue is just like ridiculously good. And skinny Alec Baldwin was pretty rad in this movie. His dialogue is infinitely quotable, and he plays like real creep in a film full of creeps. And his like tiny little role in that is probably one of my favorite cameos, I guess.
Well, when I think of Cate Blanchett, I often think of cop comedies. She had a very small part in Hot Fuzz. Yes. Apparently, she's a massive fan of Edgar Wright. So, thank you. That's an awesome one because it's just not what you would associate with Cate Blanchett at all, but how amazing.
And you still don't know it's her afterwards either. You just sit there going, wait, what? Was that Cate Blanchett?
She has a British accent and her face is covered. Charlie, pop quiz. Do you know the other surprise cameo in Hot Fuzz?
Oh, it's been too long since I've watched it. No, what is it, Jess?
Peter Jackson. He plays the Santa Claus that stabs Simon Pegg in the hand.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
He loves cameo. My favourite thing with all the Lord of the Rings Hobbit films was picking out when he was going to turn up. Like that, I always loved that. First time he turns up, he's drunk, burps, and has a carrot. Like, it's great. It's wonderful.
All right, Daniel.
I have a little list. One of my favourite ones that most people are aware of is Nicole Kidman in Panic Room. When Jodie Foster calls her ex-husband, the ex-husband's girlfriend answers, and it's Nicole Kidman because Nicole Kidman was originally cast in the film. So that's a little anecdote. She's in that. Martin Scorsese in Taxi Driver. He plays this really angry guy that Travis Bickle picks up and has this great monologue. Very strange, but great. Sigourney Weaver in Cabin in the Woods. Just perfect that she turns up at the right moment is wonderful. Even though we knew about this one, but I realized when I saw this at the cinemas that a lot of people didn't know this person was going to pop in it. Kristen Wiig in Mother was pretty great. Yes. Because no one expected her to turn up. And I remember when she turned up in the film, I saw it in San Fran, and these two teenagers were sitting next to us, and they went, what the fuck is she doing in here? And then, of course, you see what she does in the film, and it was a magnificent version of what you expect a person to do. But probably my favourite, and I only just remembered this, is Bruce Willis in Ocean's 12 when he turns up to play himself.
While Julia Roberts is playing,
pretending to be Julia
someone
Roberts.
Else playing Julia Roberts.
And they keep saying, because you look like her. No, you look like her. And they never say that she looks like Julia Roberts. It's just Bruce Willis as Bruce Willis hanging out with Julia Roberts playing someone else pretending to be Julia. It's so great. In a film that's not at all good. It's just the most fantastic moment. I remember seeing it at cinemas just going, the whole film is worth it for that.
Anyway, circling back around, I'm going to name the master of all cameos.
Oh, yes, the big reveal.
Yes.
Well, I thought I knew it, but you already mentioned them, so it can't be them. So we'll see.
Does anyone want to give me a drum roll, or should I just blurt it out? Okay, the master of cameos has to be, undoubtedly, Stan Lee. He appears in every single Marvel film ever as different characters. Actually, some people argue that some of them are connected, but it's different characters. And sometimes he appears in them more than once due to the extreme abundance of post-credit scenes. But it's Stan Lee. I'm giving the crown to Stan Lee. Coming in second place is, of course, Matt Damon, but number one.
I'm sure Alfred Hitchcock is very upset somewhere.
Oh, fuck Alfred Hitchcock. Stan Lee, man. Stan Lee. I'm living in the now. Stan Lee.
As mentioned earlier on the podcast, The Butterfly Tree is finally in cinemas after debuting at this year's Melbourne International Film Festival. I spoke to the movie's writer and director, Priscilla Cameron, about the process of bringing the script to life, assembling a stellar cast, and filming on Mount Tambourine. Priscilla, thanks for joining us on SWITCHCast.
Thanks, Jake.
So the cast, Melissa George, Ed Oxenbould, Ewan Leslie, and Sophie Lowe, are pretty amazing in this movie. How did you manage to get these actors together?
I think they responded to what was on the page in the script. And the script was written with a very sort of specific visual aesthetic which supported that magical realism aesthetic that exists in the film. And I think that plus the character interactions and that the characters were, they often had something else going on rather than just being one-dimensional or two-dimensional. They had past lives and they had quite in-depth backstories if you wanted to really look into that, which, I think is always sort of exciting for an actor. I met with all of them. I did audition Ed. Melissa committed very early on in the piece, I think 3 to 5 years before we went into production, and I think she just embraced the character of Evelyn and must have fallen in love with her or seen herself very much wanting to fulfill that role. So she was committed for a long time and stayed committed, which is kind of an amazing thing within itself. And then Ewan I saw in some short films, and he was recommended to me by a friend, and I watched him in a couple of short films, and I had this moment where, oh my God, he is Al, he's the character. You just know when an actor embodies the character.
Just regarding the script itself, you started writing it around 2010. Between then and the time of the Butterfly Tree's release, how much did the script change?
It changed quite considerably. I mean, interestingly, an early draft of this script won the AWG Monty Miller Award quite a few years before it was actually made. And it was very different in terms of it had a lot more insect fantasies in it, and it was kind of very loose in terms of a 3-act structure and having a very tight arc for the characters, trying to find links as to why Evelyn would caught the attentions of a boy, so young. That ended up becoming the roller skating in the rain scene, which is a shared fantasy between Finn and Evelyn. And in that moment, it was about her need to live in the moment and just to be playful and be a child again because she's facing her own mortality. So she just wants a break from this heavy load that she is carrying. And so that sort of came about because I found out that Melissa was a national roller skating champion in her younger years. And so I wrote in her roller skating, and that scene became about them connecting as two ageless, sexless beings in this shared fantasy. I kept wanting to write more of Shelley in because I really enjoyed her character.
I was going to say I really loved Shelley. Just like some of the lines were hilarious. The spider babies and that type of stuff cracked me up.
I have one of these relationships on screen with Sophie, though, where I just want to watch more and more and more and more of her. She could sit there and do nothing and I'd be entranced. So I was trying to find ways to keep deepening or more screen time for her character. And in the end, I could only get so far, and there was quite a bit of pressure to reduce her character as well, and advice like, well, she's not a necessary character to the story. Quite a few people said you should just take her out. So I fought against having to lose her entirely, and I'm glad I didn't. But aesthetically, the script and the film from the beginning has stayed true to that written vision.
I was reading before that a lot of the inspiration for your film came from European movies like Pan's Labyrinth and Amelie.
Yes.
The films of Michel Gondry and Almodovar. In terms of making a film with lofty inspirations, how do you tackle that on a small Australian feature film budget?
First of all, I think I would not want to not encourage people to aim high because, you aim high, you're going to land somewhere. So I think setting the bar high is not something, I don't think you should worry about regardless of what you're attacking. I think when you come to the actual attacking or the how-to process, then you go, okay, these are the resources I have available to me. What can I do within this space? How can I control the design of my frame? How can I be ingenious and how can I be clever about that? So the short answer is no, of course. On a low-budget feature, you're never going to have the same resources as those filmmakers that I referenced have, and therefore you can never control the design of your frames and what goes on in your frames to the same degree. But I think by limiting the worlds in which you're going to have that degree of control and choosing where am I going to get the most bang for my buck in terms of if I just have one set, and I put my focus on controlling the design of one set and it becomes like a hero piece in my film. And then how do I make the other worlds of my film contrast that or support that? And those hero pieces were the glass house and her shop. That's only 2 sets. The way I approached all the other worlds of the film is to choose locations that had a colour palette that would support those worlds, and then to actually, either strip out so you look like it's designed, but in not, you're just using reductionism. Yep. or you are looking for pre-existing places that already have a design element.
You're already working on a new film, The Breathing Sea, which sounds pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so The Breathing Sea was written in collaboration with another writer called Heather Phillips. It tracks one woman's lifetime journey. She's a German Jew escaping Nazi Germany, and she comes to Australia and falls in love with a station hand, and she comes with her sister, and they move to a remote coastal town, and just when their relationship is blooming, her husband gets called up for war and he leaves, and she's alone in this isolated coastal town. And she reaches out and befriends a young man whose sexuality we discover is quite fluid, but she finds a soulmate within him, and she's already pregnant with her husband's child. But she loses that child, and it's her soulmate who's there to support her through that. She can't tell her husband that she's lost the child because she thinks that that's the one thing that will keep him alive while he's at war.
I can't wait to see that one. On the podcast, we like to recommend one film every week to our listeners, and we like to ask our guests for their suggestions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could recommend one film, what would it be?
I do, and it's because I enjoy her aesthetic so much, and I think she does experiment with what I'm talking about, which is what is a visceral experience, what is the tactile experience that's happening in the moment, and that's Andrea Arnold and American Honey.
Ooh, okay.
So that would be what I think is a film that I've seen in the last year or so that speaks to trying to push further to give the audience some kind of tactile experience that happens as well as an emotional experience. I've been a huge fan of hers since Fish Tank, so she has someone who I think leans into their spirit, like embraces their instinct in the moment. And I think that's really exciting. I know that she is a filmmaker that could pretty much make whatever she chose to make and people would finance her. So she's in a very privileged position, having this reputation as being a bold, authentic, original, visionary filmmaker who people want to support.
Priscilla, thank you for joining us on SWITCHCast.
Thanks, Jake.
Make sure you catch The Butterfly Tree from today. It's opening in cinemas across the country, so to find a screening near you, head to facebook.com/Butterfly Tree Film and check out the upcoming events. And you can hear an extended version of my interview with Priscilla at youtube.com/MakeTheSwitchAU.
This week, we're giving you the chance to win one of 5 Blu-ray copies of Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets from The Fifth Element director Luc Besson and starring Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, where Valerian and Laureline embark on a mission to the city of Alpha, a planet where species from all across the universe live together. But Alpha holds a mystery, and Valerian and Laureline must race to uncover its secrets and save the universe. For your chance to win, head to maketheswitch.com.au/comps now.
And before we go, we'd love to offer you some cinematic inspiration, with each of us suggesting one film that you should see this week and why. For me this week, I'm a really big Wes Anderson fan. I love his work. I love his style. I love his quirkiness. So this week, I'm going to recommend everyone see The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, it is amazing. If you have seen it, go and revisit it because it is oh so much better with every watching. It's essentially set in this hotel, and you meet all these fantastic characters who occupy the hotel. It has the most amazing cast you could ever imagine in the way that only Wes Anderson can muster. It's got Ralph Fiennes in it. It's got William Dafoe in it. It's got Adrian Brody in it. It's got Jeff Goldblum in it. It's got Harvey Keitel in it. It's got Jude Law in it. It's got Bill Murray in it. It's got Edward Norton in it. It's got Jason Schwartzman in it. Oh my God. It's got Tilda Swinton in it.
Also has a large bunch of women in it as well. You've just listed literally every man in the film. I mean, it also has like Saoirse Ronan and Tilda Swinton and some pretty great people, women.
Honestly, it's a stunning cast, and so is every Wes Anderson film, but I think this probably is one of the pinnacles, at least until we get his next one, which I'm dying to see. Yeah, there's just so much about this to love. Everything I adore about this.
Even I, who can't stand Wes Anderson, thinks Grand Budapest Hotel is incredible.
Did you just call it Grand Budapest?
Grand Budapest Hotel.
All right, Jess, what about you for this week?
Oh, okay, I'm really excited because I'm obsessed with this film. It came out in 2009 and it's a little indie called Timer. It stars Emma Caulfield, who Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans would know. She played Anya, the Vengeance Demon. So it's set, I guess you could say, not really in the future. It's set in a world where the vast majority of the population have implants in their wrists, which is a clock that counts down to the exact second of when you're going to meet your soulmate. So we meet our main character, played by Emma, who's Una, and her countdown clock, which she's had since she was a teenager, is blank. And all that means is that her soulmate doesn't have one yet, so there's nothing to partner with. Meanwhile, her best friend / stepsister, Steph, has one that reveals that she won't meet her soulmate for another couple of decades. So they both handle life very differently. Una sort of systematically dates men without timers, convinces them to get one to see if they're the one, while Steph basically sleeps with a whole bunch of people with timers as sort of like their last hurrah before they settle down with their soulmate. So in the meantime, Una ends up sort of reluctantly forming a relationship with a younger man who works at her supermarket, sort of to pass the time, I guess, until her soulmate gets a timer. And so it's a romantic sort of comedy drama. And one of the things I love most about this film is this question of, if you could find out when you're going to meet your soulmate, would you, can bring up so much apprehension. So something that is so joyous and supposed to be so beautiful as to meet your soulmate can actually have this really existential dilemma of, should you find out, or should you experience these in-between moments, these life experiences and these different love affairs and relationships in order to prepare you for that ultimate forever one. And it's really hilarious and it's beautiful. And I just love all the questions that it invokes. And I think it's a great, great indie film. So like this magic realism, sci-fi element to it that I think everyone should look for. It's called Timer.
There you go. Daniel, what have you got for us this week?
I'm going to recommend a film which I was a little reticent to recommend it because it seems really obvious, but it also shocks me how few people have actually seen it, because it's a film that everybody should see and is consistently voted the best science fiction film of the 21st century. And that's Alfonso Cuarón's 2006 masterpiece, Children of Men. It's a post-apocalyptic film, but unlike any post-apocalyptic film you've ever seen, I won't tell you what the story is other than it's a film you must see. When this first time I saw it at the cinemas, I went expecting like a 1984-ish film and ended up hugging my knees and sobbing because the film is such an emotional and oral and sensory assault. It stars Clive Owen and Julianne Moore and Chiwetel Ejiofor. It's quite honestly one of the most incredible pieces of filmmaking we've seen this century, and the technical work that is done in this film surpasses what Alfonso Cuarón did on Gravity. There is shit in this film that I still to this day do not know how they did. It's phenomenal. Like, it's a perfect film. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's tough. It is tough going, but it is incredibly rewarding and beautiful and devastating. So Children of Men, Alfonso Cuarón's masterpiece. Watch it.
Good suggestion. And Jake, last but not least, what have you got for us this week?
So I mentioned a movie called Black Christmas earlier, and we're talking about Christmas horror movies. So Black Christmas is a 1974 Canadian slasher film with not that much gore, but it's like really high on atmosphere and scares and just like really ultra tight direction. It's by a director called Bob Clark. It stars Margot Kidder and Olivia Hussey. It's kind of the original bunch of sorority girls in a house over Christmas. They're isolated and they start receiving mysterious phone calls, and the calls gradually, ratchet up in terms of intensity and weirdness. In this movie especially, the phone calls, like this is like the best of these style of movies. So the phone calls are like super scary and well done and amazing sound design. And yeah, this movie is this movie's been remade like really badly a few years ago, but in terms of pure scares and just this really just deliciously creepy atmosphere, I don't think it's really been touched. It's definitely a classic. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier as well, like I think it is kind of the best Christmas themed horror movie. If you're into that type of stuff and you're looking to gather some more interesting movies to watch over Christmas, I'd probably start with Black Christmas.
Honestly, Christmas is only improved by horror. So there you go. There's our suggestions for the week. And you can find the links to all the articles we've talked about on this week's podcast at maketheswitch.com.au. Please subscribe to SWITCHCast on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to rate us and stay in touch on Twitter. I'm at Charlie_David. Jess?
I'm Miss Jess_Switch.
Daniel?
At Daniel Lamon.
And Jake?
At Jake Chatty.
Like it, follow it. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at MakeTheSwitchAU to stay up to date with all the latest reviews, news, trailers, and giveaways.
And you can find all the notes and links to everything we've discussed on this week's podcast, as well as other episodes by visiting switchcast.com.au.
On next week's show, I'll have my verdicts on The Disaster Artist and Wonder.
I'll check out The Man Who Invented Christmas and National Theatre Live's Peter Pan.
Plus, I'll have my review on the firefighting biopic Only the Brave. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you all next week.